and welcome to Indy. I'm Michelle Pini, and today we're speaking with Ranald Macdonald AO. Ranald is the founder of the Australian Press Council and former CEO and editor-in-chief of The Age. A journalist, media executive, broadcaster, and educator, Ranald also served as a chairman of the Boston University College of Communication Department of Journalism. Welcome to Indy, Ranald. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle.
So I believe you've been busy yourself lately with some news. You have some news about a possible book in the pipeline.
It's really not public yet, but through you, scoop. No, I've finished a book which has taken 8 years, and the trouble about it is that I absolutely hated writing a book about myself and in the first person and using I all the time and making judgments about what happened in my career and all that sort of thing. But I sent draft of it written by someone else to the publishers, potential, and they all said it's got to be your voice. So 8 years later, in my voice is a book, and I've draft titled it Battling Murdocracy. And Murdocracy is a name which a wonderful Australian journalist, John Pilger, wrote about, which is using the media power and the influence of news for your own benefit, for financial and or power.
Yes.
And Murdocracy seems to me the ideal title for what I've been trying to battle all my life.
Indeed. And not only that, it's the ideal title pretty much for what we try to counter on Independent Australia, as it happens. And of course, John Pilger wrote about it for us as well, which is really, appropriate, I think, that we're discussing it now, because it's one of the things, isn't it, that you and I have talked about before, but also that you've written about, and I've written about, and this kind of overarching power, if you like, of the mainstream media, led by the Murdoch-owned media, which is the majority of the media in Australia, and what that means for media in general in Australia.
Well, it's not just Australia, of course, it's America, with his Fox and with his various newspapers, Wall Street Journal, New York Post, whatever, and in England with the Times, and et cetera, et cetera. It's just that he is representative of all that's worst in journalism. And of course, we now got the impact of the Musks and, the others who are trying to control and the material that we get. They're not just controlling it, they're actually slanting it in the way that they feel they want it to be presented. And it means that for all of us, we don't know what to trust. No one knows what to trust. And people are being taken in by absolutely false information.
Yes, I would have to agree with that. And I think, the advent of social media in some ways freed up a lot of voices. People were able to open the debate on a lot of issues that were hitherto, I guess, only spoken about in the general press. But that's also kind of led to a bit of a control issue now, of course, with Musk taking over Twitter, and of course Zuckerberg, who is also has his own agenda and is, for example, a supporter of Trump as well. Running Meta, which is both Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. And so you've got that whole theme echoed throughout those areas as well.
Well, it seems to me that the problem that we all have is to know what is truth, what is fair reporting, what is information we can use in discussion and debate. And we need, therefore, some very good newspapers online and offline, yours obviously being one, because I've always said that it's a terrific contributor to independent journalism. But everyone needs to know what information you can actually base your decisions on. And we need a strong ABC, pretty obviously. We need a better ABC. And having been on the ABC for some years as a morning presenter, I very unhappy about it, really, but I still support it and wanted to do better. The Age newspaper that I ran, it's got wonderful material still, some terrific writers, but it's denuded its staff, and unfortunately, it's not the paper that I believe it ought to be. Its investigative journalism is outstanding. And the Sydney Morning Herald and it working together, Kate McClymont, Nick McKenzie, there are others, are just setting standards we've never seen before. But we need more of them, and we need you, crikey. We need a whole lot of independent voices that can be trusted.
And so let's talk about the ABC a little bit, because we now have a new there's a new chairman, of course, and there's a new CEO. Sorry, a new managing director as well. What do you think are how has this kind of erosion of the ABC as an independent source of news kind of been eroded over a period of time, do you think? What are the key causes?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. Appalling leadership, not just the chairs, but the political appointees on the board, the chief executives. It's just gone, sadly, backwards over a number of years. And then that's allowed, with the Murdoch bullying of it, for his own ends, governments, particularly the right-wing governments, to reduce its funding and argue that it's left and it's biased and all that sort of thing. But we need a courageous, really need an independent, courageous ABC. And I just wish I was given an opportunity back in 1983 when the current chairman at that time, when it became a corporation for the first time, 1983. I was just finishing up at the Age, and I was getting a bit depressed about the pressures and the problems of the partnership and the differences between Fairfax and Symes, and the Syme membership selling out. It wasn't all Fairfax, please let me be clear. The Syme partnership members were wanting to sell their shares, and we needed to retain a certain number. So anyway, I was offered in 1983 the position of chief executive, the first managing director of a corporation of the ABC. I went to Sydney, and then sadly I had to say I thought I was letting down the family, and various other reasons I didn't do it. But I really, really wish I'd been able to have a bit of a go at the ABC, because I'd be more informed. And though I did, morning present for a while, and I've been close to the ABC, a friend of the ABC, but there were some really serious problems in my view, in its structure. Kim Williams, it seems to me, may be very intelligent. I wonder how well, this is only a question, I wonder how well he handles staff down the line. I wonder about the intelligence of criticizing the choice of material publicly, or it got out publicly to all the members, without really discussing it with his own executives, because there was an immediate vote of no confidence in his executives. And so I'm still concerned, really, really concerned, because I think the ABC is crucial, just crucial to fair reporting.
And how much do you think this idea of both sidesism, this idea that in order to be independent, you must present both sides of every argument, how far do you think that's at the core, if you like, of what's going on with the ABC? Do you think that that's part of it?
I think it's a bit, I had to use the word simplistic after your brilliant question, but I think, frankly, that its fairness and its accuracy and its impartiality. Look, there are frequently one side of an argument is much stronger than the other. You don't balance the two and make them equal. And so there's got to be a judgment, and it's a judgment by people with knowledge who present the facts. When I became editor-in-chief of The Age with the great Graham Perkin, the first thing we did was to change the term comment on people's writing, who are writing opinion pieces to analysis. The point about analysis, which we did in our editorials too, is that you need to present the facts on which you have come to a conclusion. A good editorial you can read and come to a different conclusion.
Yes.
And it seems to me, the old story, comment is, cheap and easy, and getting the facts is hard. But trouble is, there's too much comment. There's too much that is absolutely untrue. There's too much of an attempt to create drama and one side or the other. Nothing being presented that doesn't inspire some sort of anger or enthusiasm.
Yes.
People are reporting for the emotional impact.
I think, though, that, there is this case, for example, of presenting both sides. I think this is a problem at the moment, personally, where, you're expected to present both sides of everything, but some things, there really aren't two sides. For example, gravity. There aren't two sides to gravity, okay? And in the same, in the same way, there aren't two sides to climate change. Climate change, is a scientific fact. So by giving credence to people who present the other side of climate change, or the other side of being vaccinated during a pandemic, for example, that there aren't two sides to that argument, as far as I'm concerned. So I kind of see that as an overcompensation, which has become a habit, and I think that that's happening at the ABC as well. They will frequently.
Well, can I say it's partly fear, it's partly because of the attacks of one side of politics, particularly, and of course of the Murdoch empire. I mean, I cannot believe the ABC has been giving people who get plenty of time on Fox and on through the various branches of the Murdoch media. And Kerry Stokes runs it in Western Australia, and they don't own Western Australia, but it's of the same ilk. So you've got every state in Australia.
Yes.
They're giving additional time. I mean, Greg Sheridan was a regular on the ABC in Sydney and Melbourne. Why?
Yep.
Why? We used to have terrific reporters on the ABC. Why were they not given the time?
Exactly. And why, when, for example, and this happens often, I think, at the moment, to sort of counter this argument about them being too left, if there's an issue, for example, a new policy instigated by the Labor government, the first person they will go to is the opposition leader or a representative of the opposition, as opposed to let's present the policy first by the government and then have them comment. Do you know what I mean? Like, I sense that there's this kind of overcompensation for that.
I think Bud Dutton's had an absolutely dream run, and I think it's not fulfilling the charter of the ABC the way he's been. I mean, inside it, inside is almost unwatchable. In my
absolutely.
But the fact is that things are happening which is so bad, and there's no one calling them out. Media Watch is very good, but the ironic thing about Media Watch is that it gets no coverage, none in the newspapers. Its timing is, of course, a Monday night, and therefore it misses if anyone was going to cover it, but they're not really interested. And it provides the best analysis. Let me just, if we've got plenty of time, can I just read you something very quickly?
Absolutely.
Honestly? Okay, this is from, the light's not so good, so I'm going to go sideways just for a moment. This is from John Sylvester on Saturday. I'll only read it briefly. This is the hard lessons from the Cronulla riots of 30 years ago. He starts off, outrage is the new black. Jumping to conclusions is an Olympic event. And for reasons no one really understands, attacking strangers who have a different opinion is social media equivalent of being a big game hunter. It was 20 years ago when we first learned what could happen when the worst of traditional media intersected with the sewer pipe of social media, resulting in an ugly riot that could have been so much worse. And this last point, that day, it was the day that Australian rednecks finally bared their racist teeth. To others, it was a time when a malevolent core of sexist Middle Eastern men turned into a vigilante force. That doesn't give the total balance of the article, but it ends with some incredible quotes. We've seen them, and I'm not going to read them, from Mike Burgess, the ASIO Director General, who started off ended with his report by saying trust in institutions is declining, intolerance is growing, even truth finds itself as being undermined by conspiracy. We are going through a period when facts don't matter.
Yeah.
There are the alternative facts.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because, that coincides as well with this, the second rise of the reincarnation of Trump, if you like, in the presidency, and now Musk, an unelected member of the government over there, controlling so much of what's happening. And I think that there is a sort of a new undercurrent of far-right politics entering the sphere. I think that that's fair to say, that the Cronulla riots probably were, as you say, as the article
John
said,
Sylvester.
yeah, a turning point, if you like, or a moment in time when we could say, okay, something isn't right here.
But I think there's something else really, really significant that's happened in America, and you understand this better than most, and that is the blending, the melding of politics with the law. It used to be, and the whole British concept of separation of power was really underpinned by the fact that the legal system wasn't impacted by political views and the power of politicians.
Yes.
And it seems to me that has been the most concerning change in America. I think there seems to me anyway, they have real concerns going on into the future. I mean, the Supreme Court is of political persuasion of the far right domination, and it's going to go on for years under their system, so that even a change in government is not going to change the peak body of the judicial system.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so, we've got situations here such as, I mean, look, I'm going to backstep a little bit, but in the 80s, you actually were involved in prompting the Victorian government to set up the Norris inquiry into media ownership in Australia. Do you think, that having a Murdoch Royal Commission, as Kevin Rudd suggested, might be the starting point to change in Australia, or not?
It's got to be more broadly based, in my view, because since that time, the social media has had such a big impact, and so has obviously non-newspapers. I mean, the non-traditional media, particularly. So I think that there has to be some rebalancing of a situation, but anyway, a public airing of the concerns, the conflicts, and the problems. Just to take you back to one other one that I just wanted to get you to remind yourself of, and that is Greg Sheridan was meant to be, or is meant to be, writing on foreign affairs. That's his big thing. And yet during The Voice, there was a headline on the front page of The Australian, which was a vote no is a vote for democracy, on The Voice, written by him. Now, what was he doing? Using like Chris Kenny, and all the political people who come from the Gerard Hendersons to to the IPAs, to all the others who write. Why are they being given a platform with absolutely no check on what they say?
I don't know. I don't know the answer, but But maybe is a Royal Commission a starting point, not necessarily a Murdoch Royal Commission, but a media Royal Commission, or is that never going to happen? Because let's face it, the last time a Labor government mentioned an inquiry, they were
Yes.
swiftly kicked out, interestingly. So, I mean, is that
Well,
even a possibility?
well, it's a really interesting and good question. The only thing I would say is there is a fear that you will be bullied and probably out of Parliament by the main protagonists in the media. And I won't keep mentioning Murdoch, but it is true. There is a bullying in the media, which we've seen. Human Rights Commissioner, just think about, was it 15 or 17 days? She was on page 1 or page 3 of the Australian being criticised. Think of Rudd, who raised the question about Murdoch and what sort of time he's had, not just here, but overseas.
Absolutely.
Through suggestions, he shouldn't be representing Australia, because he criticised Trump, and they keep, putting that up. So there is a fear, and I just wonder whether there's enough courage in Parliament to do it.
So it's probably not going to happen then. Damn it. So, okay. So let's talk about then, politics in Australia. And of course, a lot of that ties in with the media. It's almost impossible to separate the two really now, I think, in the sense that you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. So, for example, obviously the coalition is usually the party of choice for the majority of the mainstream media protagonists in Australia. I think that's fair to say. And so for a Labor government to actually get any positive publicity, they need to cozy up in some way to the media, and threats of inquiries probably won't help. But do you think that this coming election is going to be a fair kind of, a fair analysis of what's happening in politics, or is it going to be again taken over by, as you said, Dutton's already had a drum sorry, I didn't phrase the question very well, but Dutton's had a dream run so far. And I think things are starting to come out a little bit more recently about, things that he forgot to declare, among other things. But is it likely that the Labor Party is going to get any kind of positive coverage, do you think?
Well, the trouble is partly that the traditional media is made up, of course, of a series of businesses. And so the businesses and directors and those running to try and make money are most likely to support the right-hand side of politics.
Yes.
I just think that we may look back, at the floods in Queensland as saving Albo, because it's given him more time, and funnily enough, some of the cracks are appearing. My second point is that the election, if you read the right-wing media, the so-called Teals, please keep reminding everyone every day there isn't a Teal party. Some of the stuff on social media that's written assumes that it's a party, and it's sort of somehow incredibly funded by Home Support. It actually gives seeding money, which allows independent candidates to get out brochures and at least have some sort of exposure. But anyway, I just think that some of the independents are going to have an influence.
Yes.
The longer this election goes, there may well be more independents than people think that will get in. And I just feel that some of them have had a wonderful impact in Canberra over the period. I wouldn't mind a number of Teals and a pretty close to hung parliament with Teals having and I'm using the word Teals generally, the independents. I mean, David Pocock has been an extraordinarily positive influence in my view, as has Monique, a series of them. So I would like to see in the next election more of a melting pot, because New Zealand, in their interesting system, has a melting pot. It always has to under their one house basis. But anyway, just to get back to the election, obviously I'm not a person who supports one party or the other. I mean, I proudly ran on the ABC as the voice of independence, but and at the age we didn't support one. We were called the Spencer Street Pravda by the opposition, and that was their way of being, trying to turn our move to an independent newspaper to their advantage and paint us as being of the right. But I would suggest to you, if you look back at our papers over those years, we were independent. We were small L liberal. We weren't in any way as presented as being left and tree huggers and that sort of stuff. It's easy to put labels on. And
Yes.
I just feel in this next election, we might get a good result.
Well, so there is a chance that there's going to be a contest of ideas then, and not just how much dirt can we dig up on on each of the leaders.
I hope that's true, because it's so easy to put labels on. It's so easy to dig up dirt and take the negatives. Do you know, I once gave a talk I was quite proud of, because to a graduating class, actually at Monash, I think, at Deakin University, and I took as my theme leap after looking, saying the look before you leap is mainly negative, because you're nervously on the edge and look before you, but you should have the mindset of leaping, of taking a risk, of saying something, of taking people on. But obviously you do it intelligently, so you look, but you should have the mindset of leaping after looking, and that I feel is a bit of perhaps a message for today.
Yeah, I like it. I like it indeed. So we don't have a lot of time left, but your thoughts in general on, I guess, whether, let's say we do have a hung parliament, but in fact it's a coalition-led government. Do you think that Australia can survive another government like the Morrison government? And in this case, it would be Dutton, of course. Or would you see that as, would we then follow more closely along the lines of the way in which the American administration is being run at the moment?
I feel, anyway, I see quite clearly, but it's only an opinion, but I see quite clearly that the concept of the coalition just getting in would be totally disastrous. They won't be able, it seems to me, to negotiate with the independents, the crossbenchers, because their policies are not acceptable, most of them. Julie Gillard was able most effectively to get the best out of her time, because she had the ability to work through with an open mind what she thought and the party thought was best for the country. I'm not saying she's the world's greatest prime minister.
No.
What I am saying, though, is that she was able to perform without total control. I don't feel the coalition could under Dutton. I feel that we would be in a really serious situation, frankly, if Dutton gets in. I also say, and I quite openly say, that Scott Morrison, of all the prime ministers, and I've worked or seen with or observed or whatever you like, half the prime ministers Australia's ever had, he's the worst, in my view, ever.
Yep, I'd have to agree, actually. And if you've read any of my editorials, you probably know that I do agree with that statement, definitely, Ranald. So just as I say, before we sign off, two things. The first one is, do you have a mantra that you live by?
Well, I was at Geelong Grammar the first year of Timbertop, which was Sir James Darling's great contribution, one of his great contributions to education. And the mantra from there was everyone who leaves should have compassion and also have resilience. And it seems to me you need resilience. Everyone's going to have a downturn. So my two sort of messages are really echoing his, and that is compassion and resilience. I further think that we are at a time when we really, can we please listen to each other?
Certainly, I love it, actually. It's certainly appropriate at the moment. And Ranald, this book that we weren't meant to know about, when is that likely to come out?
Well, in two weeks it'll go to the publishers, the chosen publishers, the ones that I tried it on before, who said they wanted my voice, and it now has my voice. I'm now quite pleased with it. Before I hated it. It's been like being on the psychiatrist's couch for numbers of years, because it's really hard to talk about yourself and the things that you've either succeeded or failed at, But it's so. I'm hoping that everyone will get it before Christmas. I'm hoping that one of the publishers will take it up, and I'm hoping it'll have an impact.
I'm sure it will. No doubt about that. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ranald.
Thank you, Michelle. Good luck too.
Thank you so much.